Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we'll have a look at the latest from the live radar, run for the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as we are continuing to see fairly settled conditions through the rest of the Christmas period, with high pressure aloft with some pretty mild air, so it is a pretty mild Christmas period. However, as we head towards the end of the year and the start of 2025, it is looking pretty likely now that it is going to turn much colder, with quite an increased risk of snow, especially in the north, but could be further southwards as well. As ever, it is on a bit of a knife edge as we do see milder air masses trying to mix in, but it is looking very likely now we do see something much colder into 2025, and we can start to see the hints of that at the end of the latest UKV run. We'll then have a look at the longer range charts, which continue to be very interesting, with the developments of colder conditions in towards 2025. GFS is showing a pretty prolonged cold spell today. It is a bit marginal at times. There is the risk of a bit of milder air mixing in, but of course that increases the risk of snow. The GM a little bit more pessimistic, and that's been a bit consistent with that pessimism over the past few days, but we'll still check that out. And then we'll look at the latest ECMWF, which goes out to day 10, and we can start to see that colder conditions pushing in into the first few days of January. And of course the ensembles as well, backing up those operational runs, are fairly consistent now, with increasing chances of those colder conditions. More and more ensemble members are coming on board every single day that passes. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, Merry Christmas to all that do celebrate, and if you don't, hope you have a great bank holiday today, and of course into Boxing Day. I thought I'd get a quick video out because it is looking pretty eventful the next week or two, and I do want to keep on top of those runs. So if you are watching this on Christmas Day, Merry Christmas, and I hope everyone has a great day. And of course, if you're watching in the subsequent days, then of course still watch the video, but we should have some more charts out in the subsequent days as well. So you start on the live radar, you can see for Christmas Day, it's pretty dry affair. We can see that small weak weather front that we've spoken about a number of times over the past few days, just across the far north of Scotland, bringing a bit of drizzle, lighter rain and thicker cloud in. But for elsewhere, it is pretty dry. There will be bits and bobs of drizzle inevitably, but it is mostly dry. Unfortunately though, it does look like there is a lot of thick cloud around. Hopefully there's a bit of breaks during the afternoon. We've seen that from the UKV the last couple of days. A few breaks in the cloud, but at the moment, as I'm recording this in the late morning, not seeing too much of that, at least where I am, in and around the southeast. Now, as said, with that high pressure, it is mild, and you see those temperatures today are around the high single digit or low double digits. Around 10 to 12 degrees will be the maxes today, so it is mild, not exceptionally mild, but a good few degrees above average, and we're going to slowly see those temperatures dropping over the next 5 days, and come the end of the month, as we have been talking about, it is probably going to be below average again. Colder conditions, temperatures down towards the mid to low single digits, overnight frosts and increased risk of snow. Now, if you go over to the latest UKV now, it only just about touches that cold air starting to move in. We can just see it pushing into northern Scotland at the end of the run. But of course, we've got a number of days until that does arrive. Now, for the rest of Christmas Day, you can see there are a few breaks in the cloud, especially across the Midlands, northern England, up towards eastern Scotland, maybe Northern Ireland as well, into parts of the Republic of Ireland. But most still going to see a lot of cloud around, unfortunately, for the rest of today. But if you are out and about at some point this afternoon, then it should be very dry, hopefully a bit of sunshine, especially towards the east of any hills and mountains. Is likely to see a bit of clearing in those areas. As we progress into Boxing Day, that weather front will slowly sink southwards, and it will bring a bit more rain across Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland and Scotland, a bit more extensive during Boxing Day. But if you go to the south, it is still fairly dry, and we are, again, probably going to see a few bits of sunshine, but still pretty similar day to Christmas Day. As we head into the 27th, still see that lingering weather front across northern areas, but it starts to strengthen as it pushes southwards and eastwards, and eventually, towards the end of the week, into the weekend, we start to see a bit of a westerly flow returning. So slightly fresher air moving in. This isn't the cold air yet, but it is slightly fresher Atlantic air pushing in. And you can see that with a few of those wintry showers across the Highlands of Scotland, and just generally some drier air, as you can see, more sunshine pushing through. And then through Sunday, we can see quite a much stronger weather front with quite a bit of line convection along it. And a bit of snow at its northern edge starts to head southwards. And this is pushing in that very, very cold air for the last couple of days of December. This is the point where we start to see massive uncertainty. What happens to this low pressure system and, of course, this weather front, which is dividing the very cold air to the north and the much milder air to the south? What happens to that will decide how quickly that air pushes in at the end of 2024 and the start of 2025, and how cold will it be. If it's a much more stronger, straightforward northerly wind with this weather front clearing quickly, then it will turn much colder, much faster. But if it's a much slower progress, then that air mass will slowly warm up and it will be not quite as cold, and it will take a bit more time over it. But we are fairly sure that that air mass will eventually push in, whether it takes 12 hours or maybe 48 hours or 72 hours. We are pretty sure though now it will push in. Now, if we do go over to the 2 meter temperatures, we can see through Christmas Day, as I said, we're expecting kind of 8 to 12 degrees max temperatures. Into Boxing Day, similar conditions, maybe slightly chillier, a bit more of an inversion taking place. Again, more towards kind of 7 to 11 degrees. In towards the 27th, again dropping a little bit more, 6 or 7s more appearing here, and then into Saturday, again around those 7 to 9s, and then into Sunday, turning quite a bit colder, especially in the north, down towards the low single digits, still 7 or 8 in the north, and then you can start to see that very cold air pushing in for Scotland, down towards freezing overnight into Monday, further southwards, high single digits, but as I said, with that transition happening, it will turn very cold very quickly if that cold air mass does push in. Now, do go over to the latest GFS now. This is the 6 o'clock run, so it has just come out as I'm recording this. I have had a quick run through, and as I said, it is a pretty prolonged cold spell, but it does have some milder incursions, which may bring some slightly milder conditions in the south, but it also substantially increases the risk of snow across parts of the Midlands and northern England, and maybe southern England as well, because of those clashes in air masses. Now, over the coming days, you can see high pressure continues to be in control, but it's this low pressure system that migrates eastwards towards Scandinavia. High pressure replaces up towards northern Canada and Greenland, and that starts to push in those northerly winds for the last couple of days of the month. Now, it's, as I said, as we saw in the UKV, cold air is just to our north by this point, but it's how quickly does this weather front clear eastwards. That will decide how quickly it gets to those colder temperatures. Now, the GFS develops another low pressure system within the flow for the final day of the month, and then we plunge into those very cold conditions. So it takes slightly longer here on the GFS, but it gets there nonetheless and would produce very cold conditions there for the first few days of January. It stays very cold for the first 3, 4, 5 days of January, and then eventually low pressure systems pushing up from the south does bring milder air colliding with that very cold air, but the cold air winds pushes it back into Europe, and then we go much colder once again. So that collision in that milder air against that colder air, that would produce lots of heavy snow, especially across parts of the Midlands and northern England. You can see substantial snow appearing here, especially further northwards, initially across southern England, the Midlands, as it transitions back to rain, and then substantial snow further northwards, and then it turns much colder for all. So you can see, yes, southern England, perhaps southwest, South Wales, East Anglia, Midlands could see snow at times, but it's really to the north of that, over the higher ground, where there could be substantial snow here, showing a good, 10 inches of snow potentially in a few spots, 25 centimetres up towards 50 centimetres over the higher ground. Of course, if this low pressure system here is slightly further southwards, then of course that snow risk would be further southwards as well. And we'd see, as I said, 5 to 10 inches across central southern England instead. And again, all down to this block here. But again, these are minor details that we will sort of work out as we get there. But this just shows you what could occur into that first week of January. And then eventually towards 384 hours, look at that massive high pressure towards Greenland and plunging northerly winds into the 10th of January. So a prolonged cold spell, and it does look pretty severe here and potentially very snowy. Very interesting one to watch. We saw a similar run to this on the ECMWF today. ECMWF probably not as prolonged today, but nonetheless it is encouraging to see this from a wide array of models, and yeah, will be very interesting watch over the coming days to see how this does develop. But if you are at the moment thinking, oh, it's not particularly seasonal Christmas, we've not got snow, not cold, it's pretty mild, it's kind of autumnal, it's all going to change as we head towards the end of the month. Regardless of this sort of pattern, prolonged cold spell comes off, it is looking much chillier and there will be a risk of winteriness into 2025. Now, if you go back to the GM, as I said, it's been a bit more pessimistic over the past few days. And again, it's not quite on board with that colder pattern as much. But again, it's important to look at these runs because it shows you what could happen on the other side of the coin. If we don't see that block towards northern Canada and Greenland hold, we don't see that low pressure clear into Scandinavia, then this is what could occur. Now, I say this has a relatively low chance of occurring now, but still a chance. So it's important to still look at it. You can see we do see those northerly winds trying to push in, but we don't see the European high clearing. Low pressure re-emerges in the North Atlantic, not blocked by that area of high pressure, and eventually we just see westerly winds eventually developing. Yes, some colder air, chillier air comes in, a bit of winteriness, a bit of frost potentially, but nothing major at all. That's completely ruled out here from the GM. I would expect it to go more westerly with all the cold air remaining to our north. So yes, a little bit chillier into the start of January, much chillier than it is now, but nothing really to take note of if we're being completely honest. Now, the ECMWF is kind of in between the GFS and the GM today. It is pretty similar to the GFS, but it's not quite as prolonged and as cold, or as cold as it was yesterday. So you can see those low pressure systems struggling to clear for late December. It does only happen into early January, but eventually we've got a big North Atlantic block, very strong northerly winds, very cold air pushing in, and eventually we see this other low pressure system just sort of developing within the jet stream here. The jet stream's diving southwards, but heading northwards just to the south of us, basically in the channel, and that does produce this little low pressure system that could produce significant snow. Again, it's not a classic massive snowmaker, but it's one of these where it would be exceptionally marginal. Got very cold air wrapping in on the back edge of this system, got milder air inside, and we'd likely see blizzards and snow on its western edge. So that's one to keep a very close eye on. ECMWF, as I said, not as clear cut, not as prolonged as the GFS, and doesn't quite get there as quickly, but it is nonetheless very interesting and still would produce some wintry conditions into 2025. Now, to finish by looking at the latest ensembles. Now, the latest GFS ensembles are only just running, so unfortunately we haven't got them out beyond the 5th of January, but I wanted to get the video out, so we're able to look at the next sort of 10 to 12 days. You can see much milder at the moment, trending back towards average by the weekend, but then look what happens into 2025. There is a lot of spread, and I do think that's mostly down to how that low pressure system clears through the UK. Some of the runs are a bit more delayed, they're milder for the first few days of January, then go colder. Others are much colder, much earlier, and in the end it just gives us this massive kind of spaghetti graph where it's all kind of messed up. Generally, the ensemble mean is a couple of degrees below average. We have got a lot of runs around that -5 to -10 region. That's important. That's the kind of slot where you would need us to be for snow. Anything below that, then it would be exceptionally cold. But kind of -5 to -10 is kind of the sweet spot for the UK to see any snow. So yeah, definitely feeling very cold and very wintry. If we go back to the midnight run, this has fully come out. You can see there is quite a large shift there around the 2nd to the 4th. So maybe a slight uptick in the latest 6 o'clock run, but it's, about a degree or so. Lots of runs though around that -5 region. That's why we're fairly confident now it's going to go colder. Just how cold and whether we'll see any wintriness. You can see from this run there is quite a lot of wintriness here, quite big snow spikes, but again we'll have to keep an eye on this. Again, it'll only really come relevant when we're a few days away. And finally, if we look at the latest ECMWF, we've got very strong confidence here from the ECMWF that it is going to go much colder. Pretty surprised to see this, if I'm being completely honest. The ECMWF has been pretty moderate the last few days with its ensembles, not really liking to deviate too much from the mean, but that's a big drop today. So ECMWF looks like, if we see some consistency in this, if we see the midday run coming out later on this evening, if that has got this big shift as well towards colder conditions, then I think we can be fairly confident that yes, cold air, wintry conditions could be arriving and might be the favoured outcome now for early January. I think it's still slightly too early to say it's the favoured outcome right now, but maybe come tomorrow or Thursday or Friday, I think we could potentially say that. So we'll keep a very close eye on it over the coming days. But yeah, definitely looks like something could be afoot for 2025. So yeah, if you enjoy your Christmas today, not thinking it's not too wintry outside, no chance of snow over the next few days, then don't be too down. It does look like there will be some snow potentially coming into early 2025. Definitely looking like a real possibility in the north. But with these sort of patterns, with these small channel lows, with these colliding air masses, couldn't rule out something significant even further southwards as well. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you again for another video soon.